Cameron, it is great to have you here, and welcome to episode 1 of Mind Games. This is the unfiltered podcast where we dive deep into the minds of standout founders across the globe. My goal with this podcast is to be the opposite of LinkedIn. I want to show the audience what's really going on behind the scenes for people who are really making things happen. So, Cameron, please, take a minute or two and introduce yourself. Tell us your story, what you do, and how you got there.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and yeah, it's wonderful to connect. So, my story is essentially I work with business owners, and I do some similar work to what the audience know you do, deep foundational inner work based around hypnotherapy, shadow work, and meditation, with the goal of allowing people to access their full potential. And my story, I mean, it's a bit of a long one, but it did involve living with a hypnotherapist and a Buddhist nun for 2 years and just soaking in all that with these mentors, and then later learning from a psychotherapist and just being able to take all of that on, and uh, then jumping into my own business and seeing where that took me and making many, many mistakes along the way, but also being able to work with incredible humans and see them access their potential. So it's been a beautiful journey.
Awesome. And do you have a main type of client you work with at the moment?
So I've been playing around with it, seeing who resonates with me the most. And I keep finding myself working with business owners who actually run sales teams. And that's who I've been working with primarily, but entrepreneurs in general. And what I love about working with these people is they just have that drive, that desire to create. And then when we're able to kind of unleash that, it just works out in beautiful ways. And it's really fun to do that sort of work.
Beautiful. So now we've got a bit of a lay of the land. I'd like to rewind a little bit, and I'd like you to walk me through and tell me the story of a major challenge you faced in your business life, in your internal life, and we can go into how you overcame it, the mindsets, the emotions, and everything. But just to start off, could you tell me what was happening at the peak of that crisis, that battle? What was going on externally and internally for you?
Yeah. So this is kind of a almost a 5 year battle that came to a almost climax very recently, actually. And so I had this overarching story of almost wanting to be this up and comer, right? Enjoying that excitement of starting something new and creating. But I had this aversion, a part of me, didn't want to be like this guy who's made it, who's kind of like being successful and getting to that point. I was like kind of delaying that. And so that really showed up in my one of my first businesses when I was like 18. And I had all this structure. I was working with an incredible mentor and I earned like 4.5K in 1 month, right? This was the first month I had started it. And at that time, that was an incredible amount of money. It's more money than I had touched at 18. And the second month was kind of similar, and the third month was also similar. But what happened is those first few months, I was just running on this survival, and I was just, grinding, doing everything. And then something just clicked when really felt kind of safe, like I'm doing good. And it was this pattern of not wanting to get there because this part of me didn't feel aligned with that. Part of me was like, that that resonates with who I don't want to be, right? This kind of old, retired, uninspiring human that I had kind of taken on as my idea of someone who's made it. And so at that time, it was really challenging. And what happened in that business is I just couldn't do all the things that I should have been doing, right? I didn't do the outreach, I didn't do content. I was still working a lot, but I was always doing like fiddly bits that didn't actually take make any difference. And so that those initial 3 months just went down, 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 down. And it lasted for 12 months, but it just died, because I was holding myself back. I'd get clients here and there from luck and just from pushing through that. But every action felt so painful that it just it, it burned out. And so that's where I was at kind of the pinnacle of that problem. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or you want me to share kind of how I broke through that.
Yeah, so just how did that situation evolve over time?
Yeah. Well, I played with it in many different ways. At the time, um, I later, because that business just died, and it led me to this wonderful opportunity where I got to live and work with a Buddhist nun, but also an incredible coach who was also really well trained in hypnotherapy. And so I got all of that training at that time, and so it worked out in a beautiful way. But when I started this business for the last 2 years, that same pattern arose. I started doing really well, and then I just found myself not doing the outreach, not doing the things that I should be doing. It was really confusing to me. And this time I had a lot more discipline, so it didn't affect me as much, but I could really notice that weird kind of lack of alignment. And then I eventually did a couple of different sessions. We even spoke about it actually. And I found that that part of me started to get into alignment with this more mature part, right? And when it got into alignment, instead of seeing getting there as like this horrible retirement with no inspiration, it was about reaching my full potential. And that includes obviously making your business work and be successful, but it also included being reaching all my other goals, having all those other intentions, and just being kind of the highest level person that I could be. So once they were aligned, I just found myself being able to be consistent and being able to break through some of those income barriers that at the time felt very challenging. And so it was that alignment that led to this ease, but before that, everything was challenging.
What's interesting to me about this particularly is you touch on some very kind of advanced shadow work and performance modalities with parts work and aligning them and really going deep and back into childhood. So I'm wondering, what would you tell that 18-year-old version of yourself? Because he wouldn't have had these modalities so deeply. And as he's in this crisis, he's watching his business start to decline. What advice would you give to him or to perhaps someone else in a similar situation?
That's a really great question. It's almost tricky because, especially to that part of me, I wouldn't tell them anything because they went on a journey that it worked out beautifully. And then if I'm giving advice to someone else, it is tricky because those dynamics do take a little bit of a surgical understanding of what actually needs to change, right? And so the only thing that can be really useful to someone that's just getting this initial advice is holding universal love and witness for all parts of yourself. And that's a great place to start. And very often that can lead to real change, right? When we hold that for ourselves. And you may find if you are listening to this and you're in that position, that that changes it. But also, and I would tell this to myself at the time, I would find people who know what they're doing. And actually, if I can't do that surgical kind of operation in my mind that actually alleviates that problem, I would find someone who can because it's tricky and it's complex. And if you don't know what you're doing, it can be a little bit of running around a maze, I'll be honest.
I'm sure we've both seen that a
Yeah,
couple of
yeah,
times.
yeah.
So if we fast forward a little bit and we come to the here and now, to the present day, I'd be curious about an internal battle that you're facing these days. And perhaps it's linked to what you've been speaking about is the evolution of that. But maybe there's a voice that's keeping you up at night. Maybe it's just the next edge of your business. What is an internal battle that you're facing in this season of business?
That's a great question. So because I'd say I pretty much overcame that to some degree, right? I still hold and nurture what that was. but it's actually opened up a lot of space when it comes to the business now. And so in the last few months, I've had more calls than ever. And so I'm encountering a new problem, which is I'm kind of able to, like, the runway is open and it's like, well, let's do this with harmony. Got the whole multiple decades that I want to be doing this type of work. I want to be working with amazing people. And so it's almost like now that that runway was open, I was running and I was doing lots of calls and I still am. And so the current problem or pattern to work through is allowing myself to be in harmony while I do that, right? And to not burn out by going so fast forward now that the option is there and I'm like, oh, I can do it, I can make this, I can grow to this next space. And it's just allowing that to come into harmony because right now it's been this surge of energy because of the last one. And so it's exciting, but it's also like, all right, well, we can't run forever. And it can be kind of challenging and a bit draining doing so many calls. And so I'm just working with that and figuring out how to overcome that.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing I especially want to touch on is this long-term thinking that you mentioned. Thinking in
Mm.
decades, thinking 5, 10, 20 years ahead is something I see so many entrepreneurs almost think they're doing, but really they're basically just not. If they're kind of investing all their money into an AI agent's business, and if you just look ahead 1 year, 3 years, most likely those things aren't going to exist. The market's going to change, the offer's going to change, the audience is going to change. And we know as founders, as entrepreneurs, that all the value comes in compounding, in long-term growth, in this patience. And so I love that you have this longer-term vision of, I'm doing this for 10, 20, 30, maybe 40, 50 years, so I can really invest and I can figure out how do I make this sustainable? How do I make this growth sustainable? There's no point shooting to the moon if you're just going to crash right back down.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, and it goes beyond just the business, right? Just allowing for that beautiful life, that harmonious life, rather than just running towards something that is wonderful and it's fun to create and build and it's great to reach your goals, but it's not ultimately everything. It's not everything.
For sure. So how is this balance of harmony, burnout, and goals? How exactly is that showing up for you?
Well, terribly right now. Right now, I mean, last week, it's probably the craziest week. Like, I just unlocked a few things, right? So I was able to book calls way more effectively. And so I had like 7 calls a day, and each one's like an hour for 5 days, which was insane. Like, and also I've got to do all the outreach and content in between. And so I came to it, and like today's Saturday, and I was like, all right, cool. Oh my, I haven't felt this way in forever because I've always had a reasonably harmonious business, but because like the floodgates open, which is amazing for the business, I just came to it and I was like, whoa, this was too much. And so now I'm in that stage of just, all right, I want to keep this rolling, great, but how do we also, live a life that's sustainable and harmonious and enjoyable?
Yeah, that's so interesting because it seems in business, the highs are almost irrevocably paired with the lows. You sign 3 new
Yeah,
clients, it's a new high. It's also the most work, the most burnt out. You need to hire more team members, and it's almost the higher the revenue goal and the higher the achievement, the more internal chaos it causes. So it's
yeah,
great that you're just taking this time and really making sure it's sustainable, making sure it's good internally, as that makes it sustainable externally. So,
yeah, for sure.
before we move on to the question about the future, I like to have a wildcard question to keep my guests,
All
keep the
right.
audience on their toes. So I'd like to
Wonderful.
ask you, if the audience and I, if we could see your daily habits and thoughts, what might surprise us about you?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. To be honest, my life can be really boring. I think that might surprise people. Like, it's exciting. Lacey doing this work feels like magic sometimes. I've got pretty much everything that I want at this stage. I have a wonderful relationship. Business is going well, and I do it with amazing people. But my life is extremely same. You know, I do calls, I do meditation, and I enjoy that. But I think a lot of people would find it mundane, find it maybe uninteresting, and maybe that would be a surprise, but it isn't that exciting. You know, maybe that's why I get excited about tea, because my life's pretty much like same. But I love that, so that's okay for me, and that I think is why things have been working out.
I think that might be every founder's secret. Like, you see the
Yeah,
Instagram, you see the revenue goals, you don't see the 10 hours of work every day, just doing what needs to get done.
yeah, yeah, just cracking on with it.
Exactly. So, if we now fast forward a little bit more and we look towards the future, next 6, 12, 18 months, where do you see yourself? Where do you see your business? And what challenges do you foresee?
It's a great question. Did you say 6 to 12 or 6 to 18?
6 to 18, let's say.
Yeah, let's say 6 to 18 because that makes it a bit different. 6 to 18 is a hell of a long time, actually. I mean, you kind of can probably relate, like everything is really long and really short at the same time. 6 to 18 months. I mean, the next 6 to 12, I imagine it's just going to be more of the same, plugging away and moving to Southeast Asia for the next year. So that will be exciting. That will be different. But as far as, day to day, it's just going to be same. And that's what I need. That's what the business needs. That's what it needs to grow. And that's great. I think what will be interesting is 12 to 18. I'm fairly confident I'll have overcome a lot of these income goals that I'm setting right now. And I think it will be interesting to see how I feel and where I want to go from there, right? Because ultimately, I think one of the challenges will be is growing the business in a beautiful way, right? Of course, keep allowing it to grow in the most obvious way with money, but also not just getting super focused on that. You know, it's so easy to just like especially when it's doing well and you are hitting those goals, it can be easy to get focused on just that. But if I can make the business great for the clients, great for me, great for, you know, even people beyond the initial scope of the business. And so that's not something that's going to be soon. You know, right now it's just building those foundations and getting to those goals. But I think it opens up beyond that. So what do I want this to be in the next, you know, decades of my life? And that'll be exciting. It'll be a new challenge. You know, I've not overcome the current challenge, which is getting the business to where I want it financially. And so, yeah, that'll be a totally new challenge, something we've never dealt with before, of being fully there and seeing what's next.
We've talked before, we're friends, so I'd like to clarify two things to the audience that might not be clear to them. Firstly, your life is full of joy and happiness. You mentioned it was
Yeah.
boring, but that might be misinterpreted by some people. So I want to make that part clear. And secondly, that you are doing well financially. It's not as if your business is in ruin and you can't support yourself. You're making good money every month, traveling the world, etc, etc. So just want to clarify, as I know your standards are a little bit high.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. I mean, when I'm talking about getting to that next stage, it's more of getting to a place where I've kind of had these different goals for a while and I haven't necessarily topped it. Those higher income goals that I've played with but never fully got to. Right now, the business is doing great. I'm able to live, travel, do all this fun stuff. But there's a couple of goals that I've held for a while, and because of that initial self-sabotage, I didn't get to. And so that's kind of a personal intention of mine. And then in terms of the boredom, like life is wonderful. It's maybe mundane is a better word, right? It's wake up, I meditate, feel awesome. I have tea. I do a call with an incredible human. We have crazy stuff going on in the call. Have more tea, do another call, do some more meditation, eat, another call, bit more meditation sometimes, another call, another call, another call. And then I go to bed and I go to bed at like, I don't know, 10 or whatever, wake up at 8. And it's just very mundane, same, but ultimately I love it. And ultimately I wouldn't change it. And ultimately this is what I chose for a reason.
I love that, and I'm so fascinated to see how it will evolve over the next 12 to 18 months. I like to leave the audience with one thing they can take away from this podcast, among many other things, of course. So I'd like to ask you for a recommendation. And this can literally
Yeah.
be anything. This can be a comfy desk chair. This can be a song you've been listening to lately, a travel destination, a business guru, whatever you want. Do you have one recommendation that you can share with the audience?
One recommendation would be get into tea and go to Windsor Tea House in Ho Chi Minh City. And I mean, we've met the guy who owns it. He literally got me excited and hooked on tea. And it's something that I find really beautiful now, just playing with all different types, the kind of energies you can get from different teas. And now I don't even drink coffee anymore. And so that's a little bit random, but if you do get the chance, do check it out.
I love that. Any specific tea you would recommend to somebody?
It depends on the day. If you want a good chill day that just goes really well and be productive, Ting Hawaiian is amazing. If you want a day that's just chaotic and crazy, go for Dansong. Dansong is wild, but it can be fun.
The audience aren't ready for the tea highs.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get them going on it.
Perfect. And before we wrap things up, I'd like to just give you the floor for a minute or two. If there's any type of person you'd like to connect with, maybe other coaches, maybe you're looking to hire like a closer or an operations manager, or maybe you just want to plug your Instagram and tell people perhaps how they can find you and what work they can do with you.
Yeah. See, this is something I should have prepared for and actually remembered my Instagram handle. I think it's like Cameron Thomas Borthwick, something like this. If you're searching, it'll be fine. People figure out how to find me. But basically, if you're a business owner or a salesperson and you're not reaching your full potential, maybe you're self-sabotaging, like I was doing, maybe you're getting in your way in somehow or procrastinating, then reach out to me on Instagram. One of the things I do and love to do is I do a free session with whoever, and obviously you get the opportunity to be a client afterwards if it resonates with you, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Cameron, thank you for joining me. That was episode 1 of Mind Games, and I'll catch you guys next time.
My pleasure. Bye bye.